Well, let's paint the beard and the hair. I'm using this red brown, this cavalry brown from Vallejo. This is an old cavalry brown. I think the new one is less red, but any mahogany will work probably very similar to this one. As you see, I applied a dark brown first, and now I'm applying the reddish brown, this cavalry brown, in almost all the elements, the mustache, beard and hair, covering almost everything, but keeping part of the dark brown to make some dark lining. This is just a way of taking advantage of the previous layer. Instead of making later a dark lining, I'm doing it by keeping part of the previous layer without painting with the reddish brown. And now adding orange to my cavalry brown, I'm applying different layers of light. The idea with the hair is that it's something pretty similar to a non-metallic metal. It's a very reflective material, so you have to apply more brights in the areas where you usually put the lights in a non-metallic metal in the same way. So while applying different layers of light, as you see, I'm adding more orange to this mix. I'm applying those lights in the areas where the shape of the mustache, or the shape of the beard, or the shape of the different tufts of hair are curved, so they reflect the light, something very similar to the volumetry of a sphere or a cylinder, more like a sphere in this case. The sculpt of the hair is pretty good to do this kind of interpretation. It's not so good to make a wash. Those are different ways of painting hair and sculpting hair. I prefer this one because the result is so far better than just a wash over a very, very detailed hair. So you have to paint the volumes in a general way, the different shapes of the beard, mustache and hair. And then you can start defining a bit more the texture by adding thin lines with the different highlights you are applying, trying to concentrate them in the areas where the light is going to reflect more. For example, in the mid part of the tufts of hair of the hair, or the mustache near to the nose, or in the upper part of the beard. As you see, I'm adding ice yellow and volcanic yellow, which is an orange yellow, to add more light to the mix without losing too much saturation, because you want to make it saturated. As you see, this is very important right now to keep the saturation of the color, and you can see now why it's so important to change the tonality that they have changed in the copper non-metallic metal. Remember that I told you that I wanted to make a more brown copper because the hair is going to be very orange. If I made those two elements by using similar tones, as both of them are pretty similar to a non-metallic metal, remember, and both of them are orange, they will look very similar. So that's the reason because I changed the color of the copper, making it more brown, because the hair is going to be, as you see, very orange, and this make the figure to look different in those elements, not similar to each other, right? So you can see now how the hair is very different than the copper. The copper is not painted in this stage, but you will see in the final picture. And it helps to differentiate both materials. As you see, I have applied a glaze of orange. It's something that you can make if you have lost part of the tone by adding highlights. Is something very common. So applying a glaze, you can recover part of the saturation of the color, or even recover part of the orange tone. And finally, some highlights, spots of lights in the maximum light areas of the hair, and it's done. And now let's go with the goggles. First I'm applying a layer of contrast, yellow contrast from Game Workshop over my white prime in the goggles. And now by adding a bit of orange and brown, my idea is to generate some kind of reddish brown. I'm applying some glazes in the upper part of the goggles. Those are very tiny, so you need to be precise, trying to keep the lower part of the goggles still yellow. And now by mixing ice yellow and the contrast yellow, yes, you can mix both paints, no problem with that. I'm applying sparks of light in the upper part of the goggles, a small dot, and in the lower part is like a small line following the shape of the rounded goggle. And finally, with orange, I'm making the color more saturated again, but it's up to you. It depends on the style or the color you want to achieve in the goggles. Recovering the sparks of light, and don't forget to paint the goggles frame in gray or whatever. This is not very important. And you see how it works from the distance. They look pretty good. And you can also see how the hair or the beard are very different in terms of tonality from the copper. Both of them are very contrasted but different tones. Well, see you in the next video, guys, the last one. Bye bye.